Hey guys, tonight we glide quietly through the cold hush of space. The stars shimmer like quiet city lights far, far away, and you're not in bed anymore, you're floating next to one of the most stunning, overachieving planets in our solar system. Saturn. Golden, icy, and decked out in glittering rings like it's going to the universe's fanciest prom. Below you, Saturn's cloud bands swirl like pastel brushstrokes, pale yellows, soft browns, cold creams. They ripple in slow-motion storms thousands of miles wide. But your eyes, like everyone's, are magnetically pulled to the main event, those giant, elegant rings. They seem too perfect to be real. Thin but massive. Wide but delicate. Silent, yet somehow loud with beauty. And then, behind you, lonely old Neptune rotates in shadows. Same kind of planet. Big. Gassy. Stormy. But barely a whisper of a ring around its equator. If Saturn's a space queen wearing diamonds, Neptune's more like a prince who forgot to change out of pajamas. So why does Saturn get all the sparkle, and Neptune doesn't? Well, you're not going to survive long out here to figure it out. Your lungs, your bones, even your phone battery would give up in seconds. Space is a ruthless icebox. But don't worry, you're safe here, cocooned in sound. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when people are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You float closer to Saturn, letting the planet's gravity tug at you like a gentle magnet. It's enormous, 760 times the volume of Earth. That's the kind of number that only makes sense when you see it. You could fit Earth inside Saturn and still have room for 700 more Earths crashing asleep over. But for all its bulk, Saturn's light. Really light. It's mostly hydrogen and helium, a floaty, gassy giant that, technically, could float in a bathtub if you had one big enough. And yes, that's the kind of science fact that sounds like a prank. A cold wind of silence rushes by as you drift alongside its upper atmosphere. Temperatures here hover around -180 degrees Celsius. No birds. No breeze. No hum of traffic. Just the unbothered rotation of a planet that's been doing this for over 4.5 billion years. Historians still argue whether ancient skywatchers could actually see Saturn's rings with the naked eye. To be fair, the rings are bright, but they're also razor-thin from certain angles. Galileo first spotted them in 1610 through a primitive telescope and thought Saturn had ears. Handles, he called them. Cute. He didn't know he was seeing one of the most hauntingly beautiful structures in the solar system. Now, from your vantage point, the rings gleam. They span over 280,000 kilometers wide, that's more than half the distance from Earth to the Moon, but they're typically no thicker than a few hundred meters. If they were on Earth, they'd be thinner than a city block. And they're not solid. That's the biggest misconception. No, Saturn's rings aren't giant hula hoops or dinner plates floating in sync. They're made of chunks. Billions and billions of icy particles, from microscopic frost flakes to mountain-sized boulders. They're spinning so fast that they flatten into a perfect orbital disk. If you reached out, they'd zip past you like glittering shrapnel. Some pieces are as small as sugar crystals, others as big as trucks. They're leftovers. Debris. Space junk that nature turned into art. And here's the thing that gives Neptune the cold shoulder: Saturn's rings may just be a freak cosmic accident. You see, most of the outer gas giants have some kind of rings. Jupiter has thin ones. Neptune has sketchy, ghost-like bands. But only Saturn won the lottery. A big, shiny, obvious, take a selfie with it kind of ring system. Maybe a moon wandered too close and got shredded by Saturn's gravity. Maybe a comet clipped a larger moon and caused a rubble explosion. Or maybe, just maybe, it was always meant to be this way, and Neptune simply missed out. That's the question you'll drift through tonight. Why the universe gave Saturn something so beautiful, while Neptune got shadows. You twirl lazily above the planet now, letting your mind loosen. There's no north, no south, just motion and silence and time. Remember that Saturn has over 140 moons. That's a lot of gravity jockeying around, pulling at the rings, shaping them. Each moon has a history, a job, a past. Some were captured, some born from Saturn itself. And some may have died for this ring system to exist. There's even a fringe theory, popular in some of the sleepier corners of astronomy forums, that Saturn's rings are younger than the dinosaurs. That once upon a time, in Earth's Cretaceous period, Saturn was naked. No rings. Just a beige orb spinning in solitude. Then boom, something broke apart. A moon? A visitor from the Kuiper Belt? The idea still makes scientists grumble into their coffee mugs. And that's the beauty of Saturn. It's a mystery in motion. A jewelry box made of chaos and ice. You drift backward now, rings sweeping by like soundless traffic on a frozen highway. You watch them shimmer. Some sections thick and bright. Others dim and dusty. They're not all made of the same stuff. Some are filled with ice, bright enough to reflect sunlight like snowdrifts. Others are full of carbon-rich debris, space soot, basically. And you haven't even seen the weirdest ring yet. That honor goes to the Phoebe ring, discovered not long ago by accident. It's invisible to the naked eye, 200 times wider than Saturn itself, and tilted like someone glued it on wrong. If that doesn't mess with your idea of rings, nothing will. Even the Cassini spacecraft, which spent 13 years orbiting Saturn, was confused by the sheer complexity of the rings. It saw waves, ripples, spiral patterns, and propeller-shaped gaps. Like someone skipped a rock through icy soup. And that, friend, is where you'll start to see why Neptune got left behind. It's not just about having rings. It's about everything else around them. As you exhale softly into the void, you know that you're only just starting to unravel the silent scandal of Saturn's jewelry collection. You keep drifting, gentle now, following the trail of glittering ice and rock that makes up Saturn's famous rings. They're not still. You might think they just hang there, like hula hoops in the sky, but no. These things are moving. Each tiny shard of frozen something is zipping around the planet at thousands of kilometers per hour, circling and circling in perfect, quiet chaos. You try to reach out again, just imagining it, and a pebble the size of your thumb would probably zip through your imaginary glove and take your imaginary fingers with it. Good thing this is all hypothetical. The rings aren't made of anything special, not really. Just water ice, mostly. Some of it clear, some of it dusty, some with weird chemical fingerprints scientists are still debating. But altogether, it's stunning. A giant pancake of orbiting rubble. You're basically floating through a frozen space cereal bowl. And here's the kicker, all that glittering beauty is absurdly thin. The main rings are only about 10 meters thick in some places. That's like the height of a giraffe. You could mistake that for a glitch if you were a bored space traveler. From far away, they look wide and dramatic. But if you were flying toward them edge on, you might not see them at all. What's even stranger is that Saturn's rings are divided. Alphabetically, sure, we call them the A, B, and C rings, mostly. But they're also separated by gaps and divisions. Like the famous Cassini division, a 4,800-kilometer wide gap between the A and B rings. That's the distance from Paris to Baghdad, just sitting there between two slices of icy orbit. Historians still argue whether early astronomers truly grasped what they were seeing when they drew these rings centuries ago. The old sketches vary, some show ears, others weird bulges, and one poor guy thought Saturn was actually 3 planets glued together like cosmic nesting dolls. Can't really blame him. Eyeglasses were still cutting edge. But let's dial into what's actually happening in these rings. Picture yourself zooming in, closer and closer, until you're between the particles, ice chunks the size of baseballs bouncing in 0 G, slipping past each other, bumping, shuffling. You might imagine silence, but this is probably a noisy neighborhood, if you had ears for it. Collisions. Tiny impacts. Gravity whispering. The particles are constantly crashing into each other, gently, for the most part. But those collisions help keep them in a flat, thin plane. They're settling, like flour shaking itself flat in a mixing bowl. Saturn's gravity pulls them inward, their orbital momentum keeps them from falling. It's a dance. A frozen, orbital ballet. One quirky fact, the rings have waves. Actual waves. Tiny hills and troughs ripple through them, caused by passing moons or even meteor impacts. It's like someone skipped a stone across the ring plane and made little ripples that never quite settle. And in the middle of all this cosmic choreography? Gaps. Lots of them. Some are carved by moons. Others by gravitational resonances. You're floating in a place where math and ice have formed patterns so precise they almost look artificial. Remember that shepherd moons are coming later, we're not quite there yet, but know this, these rings look natural, but they're managed. Maybe not by intelligent life, sorry, no space janitors, but by physics that's almost too neat to be random. Now, let's talk mass. Saturn's rings might be wide, but they're not heavy. Put all the ring particles together and you'd get a moon about 300 kilometers across. That's about the size of Mimas, one of Saturn's own moons. You might remember Mimas. Looks suspiciously like the Death Star. No coincidence. The resemblance is uncanny and the internet has not let it go. So, these rings aren't infinite. They're not endless highways of space debris. They're more like leftover pizza crusts after a chaotic cosmic dinner party. Just enough to be noticed. Just enough to make you stare. And that brings us to a quiet frustration Neptune must feel. Because Neptune has rings, too. But they're sad. Dim, you'll get to them soon enough. But they're nothing like this. Saturn's rings are theatrical. Dramatic. The spotlight hogs of the solar system. And they're not even that old. As mentioned earlier, fringe theorists love to say they're younger than dinosaurs. That maybe some massive space rock tore apart one of Saturn's moons a mere 100 million years ago. That's young in planetary years. Like, still lives in its mom's basement, kind of young. If that theory holds, then the rings are just a temporary phase, like bangs or boy bands. And Saturn might have gone billions of years being boring and unadorned, until suddenly it wasn't. Other astronomers think the rings are much older. Ancient. Formed when the solar system was still young and violent, and Saturn was just collecting whatever icy chunks didn't get flung into the sun or stolen by Jupiter. It's one of those mysteries. You won't solve it tonight. But drifting here, with the ring particles flashing past, you get a sense of just how lucky Earthlings are to be around to see it at all. You spot a fringe of the D ring, thin, faint, barely more than space dust. Then the massive B ring, so bright, you wonder if it's glowing. Spoiler, it's not. Just shiny ice reflecting sunlight. But hey, reflection is everything in fashion. And what about the F ring? Oh, now that one's messy. You'll meet it again later. It's thin, chaotic, and twists in on itself like it doesn't know what it wants to be. Honestly, it's a vibe. Here's your quirky tidbit of the night, the rings can sing. Or at least, they vibrate. Cassini once detected weird plasma waves traveling through the rings, caused by Saturn's rotation and magnetosphere. Turn those into audio, and you get eerie hums and moans. like a haunted harp left out in the void. So, the next time someone says space is boring, you tell them you've been to Saturn's rings. You've hovered between shrapnel and moonlets, dodged orbital traffic, and listened to ice whisper ancient songs. And maybe, just maybe, you start to feel the scale of it all. Not everything in space is loud. Not everything needs to be dramatic. But here, in the stillness of Saturn's icy debris field, you feel time stretching. You feel motion without noise. And you know you've only scratched the surface. Neptune's waiting. And it has a few things to say for itself. You leave the rings behind for a moment, reluctantly, like leaving a concert before the encore, and rewind the clock. Not just a little. Not a few hundred years. But way, way back. Past Galileo. Past dinosaurs. Past the time Earth's continents were cuddled together like puzzle pieces. You stop somewhere in the chaos of the early solar system, over 4 billion years ago. Everything is louder, messier, hotter. The solar system is not the peaceful planet parade you know today. It's more like a cosmic demolition derby. Protoplanets are slamming into each other like drunk bumper cars. Gravity's pulling in every direction. Moons are being stolen, broken, eaten. The sun is still a bit feral. And no one has invented coffee yet, which honestly makes it worse. Right now, you're watching the violence that may have made Saturn's rings. Theories vary, because of course they do. But one popular idea is this: once upon a time, Saturn had a moon. A big one. Maybe the size of Mimas. Maybe even bigger. It was happily orbiting Saturn for millions of years, minding its own moon business, until it wandered too close. Saturn, with its immense gravity, doesn't do close very well. There's a line, an invisible one, called the Roche limit. We'll get deeper into that later, but basically, if a moon crosses this line, the planet's tidal forces start pulling harder than the moon's own gravity can hold itself together. And then, pop. The moon shatters. You're floating above that very moment now. One instant, a peaceful orbiting body. The next, a cascade of debris. A snow globe exploded in slow motion. Chunks of ice, rock, dust, splintering out in a glittering ribbon around the planet. The start of something iconic. Something beautiful. Something Saturn probably didn't even plan. And if that seems a little cruel, well, space doesn't care about your feelings. It's beautiful, yes. But it's also violent. Things are born in fire and die in silence. Sometimes, a ring is just the leftover funeral of a moon that got too close. Historians still argue whether it was one moon or several. Whether Saturn's ring system is the result of a single catastrophic breakup or a series of smaller, tragic accidents. Maybe it was a slow build. A century here, a collision there. Some scientists think the culprit moon was covered in ice, which explains why Saturn's rings are so icy bright and reflective. Others suspect a richer mix of rock, which would mean the icy shine is just surface-level drama. You spin slowly through the debris field. You watch tiny grains of rock fuse, then break apart again. It's hypnotic. The beginning of a ring system, born not from celebration but collapse. And here's a fringe theory for your dreams tonight: what if it wasn't a moon at all? What if Saturn had a massive icy comet swing in from the outer solar system and smash directly into one of its moons? The impact would have been catastrophic. A cosmic T-bone collision. That theory's a little out there, but some scientists toy with it. After all, space doesn't come with a security camera, we're all just guessing with math. Still, the broken moon story is the favorite. One big moon, shredded into Saturn's iconic accessory. And as the pieces settled, Saturn's gravity shaped them, flattened them into a disk, pulled them into orbit, sorted them by size and speed. What began as chaos became elegance. Over millions of years, Particles collided gently, distributing themselves like sprinkles on a cosmic cupcake. Some clumped into ringlets. Some spiraled outward. Some were lost to time, falling into Saturn like whispers. You hover now above the forming rings, and they're not quite as clean as the ones you saw earlier. These are thicker, clumpier, ragged. The early rings were probably messier than today's sleek versions. It took time to sculpt them into their current symmetry. This is Saturn's makeover montage, but instead of music and makeup, it's ice chunks and gravitational harmonics. And guess what? Neptune may have had the same chance. May have had moons wander too close. May have had icy collisions. But nothing stuck. If it had rings like this, they didn't last. Or they never formed. Or they were too faint to ever matter. Saturn got the drama. Neptune got shadows. You drift forward in time now, slowly, like fog rolling through valleys of millennia. The rings get thinner, sharper, more defined. They settle into grooves. Moons begin shepherding them into place. You'll meet those ring-wrangling moons soon. For now, just float. One odd fact to leave you with tonight. Saturn's ring system may actually sing. Not metaphorically, there are literal plasma wave vibrations, converted into eerie sounds. NASA's Cassini spacecraft captured them. They sound like wind whistling through a haunted cathedral. Somewhere, the shattered moon is still murmuring. And one last thought before you drift away from this violent beginning: there's still a chance it could happen again. Right now, Saturn has a lot of moons. One of them, say, Hyperion or Enceladus, could someday wander into danger. A collision. A nudge. A gravitational accident. And if it crosses that Roche limit, boom! A new ring is born. The solar system isn't finished. It's not frozen. It's still out here, breathing, breaking, rebuilding. And maybe, in a billion years, a new traveler like you will float past Saturn's new set of rings and wonder what it looked like before. You ease your way through the dark, silent reach of the solar system and find yourself gliding toward a planet that often gets overlooked. Neptune. It doesn't shout. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't demand attention with bold rings or flashy clouds. It just spins. Cold, distant, blue. Like it's fine being the background character in Saturn's high-definition drama. But Neptune has secrets, too. And rings, yes, rings. They're just weird. You hover close, expecting maybe a shimmering display, something to rival Saturn's frozen tiara. But instead, you see something that looks like a smudge. A ghost of a ring. A wispy trail of dust barely visible even when you squint through your cosmic lenses. It's not your imagination. Neptune's rings are real, but they're faint. So faint, in fact, they weren't even confirmed until 1989, when Voyager 2 passed by. Before that, astronomers only suspected they were there because sometimes stars flickered oddly when Neptune passed in front of them. Like the planet was wearing a dirty, broken halo. You coast along the edge of one now, called the Adam's Ring. It's probably the most famous of Neptune's 6 main rings, mostly because it has something no other ring system does: clumps. Big, uneven concentrations called arcs. Not uniform rings, but partial, patchy pieces, like someone tried to make a ring and just gave up halfway through. These arcs even have names. Liberté, égalité, fraternité, French for liberty, equality, and brotherhood. Named by astronomers with a flair for the poetic. They're like cosmic graffiti sprayed on an almost invisible wall. But here's the mystery: these arcs shouldn't exist. Seriously. Physics says they should spread out into a smooth ring over time. That's what particles do. That's how Saturn's rings got so clean and symmetrical. But Neptune's ring arcs just persist. They hang together like tiny mobs of dust and ice refusing to assimilate. Historians still argue whether these arcs are being held together by gravity, magnetism, or something we haven't figured out yet. One theory blames a nearby moon, Galatea, a tiny shepherd moon that orbits just inside the atom's ring. Maybe Galatea's gravitational pull corrals the particles, like a sheepdog nudging sheep into weird clumps. You follow Galatea for a bit, watching it tug subtly at the ring material, and yeah, it's possible. The math almost works. Almost. But still, Neptune's rings don't make sense. They're made mostly of dark, dusty material that reflects almost no sunlight. If Saturn's rings are diamonds, Neptune's are charcoal smudges. You feel the temperature drop even more out here, colder than Saturn. Colder than basically anywhere you've been. Neptune is the farthest official planet from the Sun, and it shows. Your breath would freeze before leaving your lungs. Your bones would shatter from sheer cold. Your Instagram stories would get 0 likes out here. Still, Neptune's deep blue clouds swirl below you, hiding wild storms and supersonic winds. This planet is chaotic beneath its calm. It has the fastest winds in the solar system, 1,200 miles per hour. That's faster than sound. Faster than hurricanes. Faster than your last attempt to run after a bus. And above that chaos float these awkward, uneven rings. They might not be glamorous, but they are unique. Unlike Saturn's broad, icy rings, Neptune's are mostly composed of microscopic dust particles mixed with radiation-darkened ice. They're narrow, unstable, and likely short-lived. Some scientists think they're only a few million years old. That's baby age for planets. Blink and you miss them. So here's the big question: why didn't Neptune get Saturn's bling? Well, Neptune has some of the same ingredients. Moons? Check. Gravity? Yep, though not quite as strong. History of collisions? Almost certainly. But maybe the timing was off. Or maybe Neptune did have a big, icy moon that wandered too close, and its remains didn't stay in orbit. Maybe Neptune's gravitational field was just weird enough to fling the debris away. Or maybe, and here's the dark theory, it had gorgeous rings once. Big ones. But they've already disappeared. Rings don't last forever. They erode. They fall. Dust is swept away by solar radiation. Larger chunks spiral into the planet. It's possible you're looking at the dying remains of a once spectacular ring system. A ghost of glory. Kind of poetic, right? Neptune could be Saturn's future. A preview of what happens when time erases the glitter. You coast past another ring, Leverrier, named after the mathematician who predicted Neptune's existence before anyone actually saw it. It's narrow and forgettable. Like a leftover thread on the edge of an old scarf. Farther out, the Gal ring, also dim, thin, and possibly fading. There's a fringe idea, maybe these aren't Saturn-style rings at all. Maybe they're more like dust trails left behind by passing moons, or debris from micrometeor impacts. In other words, not true rings, but ring impersonators. Party guests who didn't get the memo about dress code. And if you're wondering why we haven't sent more missions to study Neptune's rings, join the club. Scientists have been begging for decades. Voyager 2 is still the only spacecraft to have flown by Neptune. One lonely pass. One quick look. And then goodbye forever. Until we go back, much of Neptune's ring story will stay blurry. Like most things at the edge of the solar system, it hides in the shadows and shrugs when we ask questions. Still, the lesson is clear: not all ring systems are equal. Some, like Saturn's, are flamboyant and loud. Others, like Neptune's, whisper. You drift one last time past the dim arcs of atoms, watching liberté, égalité, and fraternité spin like stubborn little ghosts. It's like they're daring you to figure them out. Maybe one day we will. But for now, you let Neptune rotate slowly behind you, its awkward rings trailing like forgotten scarves, while Saturn waits ahead, dramatic, bold, and ready to remind you what a real ring system looks like.